today I'm going to tell you all about the low-level discovery override specifically. It's a new functionality which is introduced in Zabbix 5.0, and basically going to talk about what exactly are those overrides, where you can use them, how you can how you can customize them, and how they can help you in your essentially work, everyday work. Right. So the low-level discovery override specifically, the name gives it away. They work with low-level discovery rules specifically, and basically they are able to give you the option, the ability to modify how your low-level discovery rule itself is going to behave in regards to the entities that are getting created by the override, by the low-level discovery. There have been already filters introduced previously, but filters do just that. They filter out specific objects and just do not take them into consideration when some certain entities should be created. Therefore, sometimes it just is not enough for us to use those filters. Well, some use cases which could be of interest. Let's say you wish to perform a monitoring of your services of your Windows services, and there are certain services that you are not quite interested in. Let's say certain services are not as critical as the others, and therefore you would want to use the overrides in order to specify those services which need to be with a lower trigger severity, essentially. Or let's say you are monitoring your file systems, and let's say you wish to monitor one of the file system at a rarer interval than any other one. Or you might have a few database tables which, again, maybe not as important. Maybe you just don't wish to create certain item prototypes, item entities for a specific table. Therefore, again, overrides are going to be your friends. And let's say if you wish to create certain objects using the overrides in a disabled state, and then gives you the ability to just review those objects, then you can also do that with the overrides. Well, where to find these overrides? This is pretty simple. There is not much to say here. You definitely need to have a discovery rule prior to that. So you just need to find your discovery rule, open it up, and there is going to be an override tab, which will allow you to customize your override. Now, the configuration of the overrides is also pretty straightforward. I mean, the form itself is very simple. Not a lot of settings here, but the idea is that it really depends on the order and the combination of the settings that you're going to use, which will define your override. The configuration process is very, very simple. So you give it a name, you give the override a name, you configure the override filters. So basically you set up the condition under which, so it's going to be a condition, a criteria, which is going to be affected. So basically what kind of part of your low-level discovery entity is going to be affected. And then you specify the operation, and the operation also is pretty straightforward. There are 4 object types which you can select, whether it's going to be item prototype, it's going to be host prototype, trigger prototype, or graph prototype. And again, you will select the condition under which this particular entity will be selected. Yeah, so you kind of create 2 filters. One filter will specify with which particular part of the override low-level discovery rule you will be working with, and the second filter is specifying which entity you are going to work with. Then basically what we can do, we are going to check out how exactly our overrides work. And we're going to talk about how the filters work as well, so that we actually see the difference here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take already pre-configured template, which is going to be Linux file systems by Zabbix agent. This template comes already with a predefined discovery rule, which will be discovering our mounted file systems. And what we're going to do, we're going to assign this template to a host, and we will run it. After we will run it, we will note that the entities, all of the entities, and specifically items that have been specified by our low-level discovery item prototypes have been automatically created, and they are automatically getting monitored right away. So you don't really have to do anything other than that, right? You should also note that all of the the low-level discovery macros have been expanded. So all of the item names do contain the file system names within them, so that it's easier to distinguish. And under the hood, what happens? So our item, when we have run our discovery rule, we have received our JSON block like this, which contains all of the information on our currently available file systems. And this is how it usually looks. There are two ways how you can, there are, of course, different kinds of ways as well how to get it, but the easiest way how to get this particular JSON, if you are interested in, then use the Zabbix get utility, or just use the test form for your discovery rule, which is available in the front end. So you will be able to see just that as well. All right, so we noticed that there are two file systems that have been found. So the root and root. Okay, that's fine. Now let's take a look at how our low-level discovery is going to behave if we're going to create essentially a new file system. This is going to be a dummy file system. It's nothing really sophisticated, but let's call it LLDFS. Yeah, so we have created a new XFS type file system. We're going to execute the discovery rule again, and we're going to see what we're going to receive. And in this case, we see that additional entities have been created, which are already monitoring our LLDFS file system, right? So again, everything is pretty straightforward, pretty simple if we're working with low-level discovery, and saves us quite a lot of time. All right, now, since we have mentioned the filters, we're going to see how the filters work. So we are going to switch to the filters tab on our discovery rule section, and we see that there are already 4 filters set up, and they all reference the user-defined macros. Well, in this case, we're going to be interested in VFS, FS name not matches. So we are going to essentially exclude a particular file system with a specific name, which we're going to use, which we're going to add as a value for that macro. And in this case, we are going to go back to our host level macro section and find the macro, which is being referenced to it. So VFS, FS name not matches is the one that we are interested in. We are going to add LLDFS value to this particular macro in order to make sure our filter is filtering out this particular file system. We're going to wait for manually reload configuration cache, run low-level discovery rule, and see what happens. So now our filter is actually, it is not going to remove all of the items instantaneously due to the fact that there is a keep lost resources setting active. Most likely it will be around 30 days. Yes, but if you set it up to 0, then instantly your filter will work and remove all of the items. But if there is a value there, then for some time these items are still going to be available, but you will see this yellow exclamation mark stating that the item is no longer discoverable and it will be removed. Now, There are, of course, situations when you might wonder, but what do I do if I actually need to keep certain items? What if I don't want to filter everything else completely, but only just modify certain parts of it? Well, there we go. Now we have the override functionality available. It is available now since version 5, as I've mentioned before, and it does just that. So what we're going to do is we will keep everything that we have done before. So we have our filters set up. That's fine. Now we're going to create a new override, right? So we are going to go to our discovery rule, switch to overrides tab. We're going to create a new override, custom update interval on boot file system. And within the filter section, don't mistake this for the filter tab. This is the filter section of the override. We specify our low-level discovery macro. So in this case, it's going to be file system name. It has to match a regular expression, in this case, yes. And within the operation section, we are going to specify that we're going to be working with an item prototype object. And we are going to match the name of the item prototype, which contains the word inode. Yes, and we change the update interval for those items only to 1 hour. All right, so that after that is done, we can rerun our low-level discovery rule, and then we see that only one item, because that is the only item which contains the word inodes, and it is the only item which was found for the file system boot. Yes, and only one item has now the interval of 1 hour. Everything else has 1 minute. So our override, it did indeed work. So that is absolutely fine. But let's not stop there. Let's create another override, which is going to be a trigger prototype override. And let's call it boot inode trigger override, which is fine. And we are going to do what? We are going to select the object type to trigger prototype. And we're going to make sure that the condition this time around for that type is going to have a inodes containing within the name of the trigger entity. And we're going to change the severity, and we're also going to add a tag. All right, well, and also we are going to specify to create this trigger in a disabled state. Well, when we're going to run this particular discovery rule, we might have a few questions. Well, whether or not the severity is going to change, whether or not our the tag value has been assigned, and whether or not it's going to be indeed disabled. Well, the first two answers are yes. So the severity indeed has changed. You can see that the two last triggers are indeed informational now, and the tags are also environment as well added, but they are still enabled. Well, that is because the create enabled setting is just doing that. So it only affects the items which are going to be created, not just the items, the entities. If an entity is going to be created, it will take that setting into consideration. Otherwise, it will be ignored. All right. And one more thing that is really, really of importance, the stop processing setting. What we are going to do, we are going to, on our second override that we have created just now, we are going to set it up to stop processing if filter matches. So we're going to use that setting. And we're going to create a third override, stop discovery of file systems if no boot partition. Okay, so we are going to use a filter for that third override as fs name equals root. And if the filter matches, then fs item discovery will not take place. Basically, that means that if we are not going to find that, then all of the file system items should not be discovered at all, because this particular symbol, so the /, the // is contained within all of the items that have been discovered. All right, well, we're going to reload the configuration, rerun the discovery rule, and we will see that basically, so if we don't have any kind of stop processing for any of our overrides, then all of the items will not be discovered. But if we do have this particular override with override setting stop processing if filter matches, then in this case our second override, which matched boot file system, has matched and the processing has stopped. Therefore, other items have been created. But if all of the overrides will take place, no stopping at the processing, then eventually we will get to the override, which will simply not allow us to discover any more items from this discovery rule. Yes, and you can see in this particular slide that all of the items are now lost and will be removed eventually. So the common misconfiguration indeed is revolving around the stop processing setting. A lot of times we see situations like this when it kind of is not that easy to wrap your head around the whole idea behind this setting. But there are situations like this. Let's say you have two objects, and let's say file systems root and boot, and you have created two overrides. Yes, so each override contains one operation, and both of the operations state that there is the stop processing as no. So the setting is not turned on, and therefore what will happen is actually in this case your basically first your items or trigger prototype will the one that is going to match the root is going to be switched to information severity, and then the second one, which is going to match boot, will also be matched to information because it also matches this particular override, right? So it kind of goes over one another. Therefore, it's very very important for you to think about the logic and to really think about when to stop your overrides. Otherwise, they might override each other, and it's just going to give you some unexpected results. All right, so finally, some notes about the overrides. You gotta be always remembering that the create enabled setting works only for newly created entities. Also, the override order is really important. As I've mentioned, it is really important in which order you're going to put your overrides. Otherwise, it might just perform certain action, certain operation that is not supposed to be happening at that particular time. And but luckily for you, you are able to drag and drop these overrides, so you don't have to recreate them from scratch. And again, another one thing is if you switch to the override section and overrides tab, and the add button is actually grayed out, that means that you are working on a host level, and the discovery rule was actually assigned from a template. And that means that you have to go to the template level and apply the overrides on a template level. You cannot do that on a host level if it's created by a template. However, if it's created on a host level directly, then you can definitely do that. And of course, typos. Typos are the bane of the overrides and low-level discoveries. So chances are you might create some typos or in a macro, for example, or just in a filter, and it will just not work at all. That is it regarding the overrides. Pretty simple feature, but very sophisticated if you do really get into it, because it does give you quite a lot of ways how you can manipulate your low discovery rules. And again, thank you for having me. And that is it regarding the overrides. Thank you.
Applit, human face of IT.